my first ever visit to New York. First time was ever in New York. I went with Ashley. She's like, "You've never been to New York?" I was like, "I've never been to New York." She took me to New York and she's like, "What do you want to do?" I'm like, "I want to go see the Colbert Report." So she literally we stood outside, got tickets, went into the Colbert Report. We gave them, because I was playing in the NHL at the time, we gave them a jersey. We're like, "Oh, here, you can have a jersey." And he gave me a big swag bag and everything. It was one of the best nights. It was awesome. Anyway, he was my favorite show.
Welcome to Drunk Real Estate.
Grab a drink and enjoy the show.
Hey there, welcome to episode 104 of Drunk Real Estate. I am Kyle Wilson, Ashley Wilson's husband. We got the whole gang together. Mauricio, your camera's looking a lot better. You figured your shit out over there. It looks good.
I plugged in my laptop. For some reason, when you put power into it, it makes it better.
I think he was being sarcastic.
No, I literally plugged it in.
I think that's actually what solved it. He plugged in his laptop.
Plugged in my laptop. It worked. Yeah.
Well, Mauricio's still on location at the Goat Ranch using Starlink on his little mini laptop, but you still found, you had to drive the 6 miles down the windy road and you found some wine, I'm guessing.
I did. I actually have dude. I'm up here in the middle of nowhere. I gotta stock up for the month or whatever. I'm actually still drinking the Sonoma, but you know why? I mean, it's actually I like Sonoma Cutter. It's a nice, refreshing drink, but it's a screw cap, and I can't find my bottle opener, so I'm like, let's go with this one. And enjoying a nice Tuesday afternoon here at the ranch.
Nice, Jay. What's going on, man?
All good. It's been a crazy couple of weeks. We finished our raise for our latest investment today, literally. So
Congratulations.
Phase 1 of the raise.
We hit our target, and so this is my celebration night, and gonna sleep in tomorrow.
So if you're celebrating, you must be drinking, right?
I'm going with coffee. So my wife she got me a coffee at Racetrack, our local 7-Eleven, and I am throwing in a bunch of Kahlua into this thing.
Did you just equate what you're drinking to 7-Eleven coffee? That's the level that you're at right now?
What do you mean? What's wrong with 7-Eleven coffee?
7-Eleven coffee. You mean the stuff that they brew a pot and then it just sits there for 3 or 4 hours?
Well, I don't know about 7-Eleven, but at Racetrack, they actually have the grounds, and you hit a button and the grounds come down, they grind them right there and they pour over. So it's completely fresh.
Yeah. I mean, if it's called Racetrack coffee, it must be good.
Yeah. Especially, you know what's really good about Racetrack? All the mold in that coffee filter is really, really good for you.
Yeah. I'm sure it's great. It's awesome. AJ, what's up, my sober friend?
What? Silver?
Sober with a
B. Sober. Yeah. I was like, silver. Yeah. Are you saying I'm going gray? What's up with that?
You're looking good. Looking svelte in a black collared shirt. I like your look.
Thank you, Jay. Salt and pepper.
I had to. My beard was getting a little long. I had to shave it off because it was definitely getting salt and pepper. As you get longer, the gray just starts to come out, and I don't have enough.
It's way
gray.
more evident.
Yours actually, at least it's a uniform gray where it's kind of nice. Mine is just random gray, one here, one there, and it starts to look awful. So I've realized that I can't grow a long beard for at least a little while until I get a little bit more gray. I'm going back with the Calumet small batch. I just noticed this is actually a blend of a 15 and an 8-year-old, but even an 8-year-old would be good.
You're talking about whiskey, right?
Well, yeah, it's bourbon. So bourbon is
when you talk about an 8-year-old, I just wanted to make sure you talk about the drink.
Yes. Yeah. I'm I don't even know how to make a joke about that. I have an 8-year-old daughter. So you guys ready to get into this then? We've
been into it for the last 30 minutes, so let's continue.
Yeah, that's true. We had a 20-minute preamble where we all argued about Stephen Colbert and the Colbert Show getting canceled. So that was a fun one, to the point where Mauricio had to leave, come back when we were done. He's not a big fan
of Trump derangement syndrome. I just leave.
Political discussions. But we will save you guys from that, because this podcast is called Drunk Real Estate, even though we get off topic every once in a while. So we are going to do both tonight. We're going to talk drunk, and we only have one topic, and it is real estate. This topic, so the topic came about when it was first announced that the governor of Florida, Ron DeSantis, was considering getting rid of property taxes in Florida, which I thought was ridiculous and I didn't think it was worth talking about. Until Mauricio, because I thought we were all going to agree, honestly. I thought it was just going to be like, this is ridiculous. There's no reason that we should talk about this, until Mauricio actually took the other side of it and said, hey, there should be no property taxes. We should have an alternate system.
Dude,
Is that what you said?
Okay, go ahead.
We should have an alternate system to the traditional yearly property taxes, where this is how I interpret it, and then I'll let you take off and expand on what you said. You basically think there should be a higher one-time transfer tax when you purchase it, and that could be spread out over, I don't know, what'd you say, 8 years or something, and that would be in place of a yearly property tax. So that just got me think, well, maybe this is an interesting discussion if we don't all agree that getting rid of property taxes is just a non-starter.
I just thought this was a really interesting thought experiment, because I honestly just heard about this last week, and I thought it was a new thing. And I just realized as I was just digging a little bit into it that actually this is something Ron DeSantis floated out a couple months ago, back in May, when, they're in the middle of, actually they just literally passed their new bill, and it's not part of the new bill, but he was kind of floating these ideas. And a lot of the stuff he was talking about made a ton of sense. And so it just got me thinking. His end result, I don't think works. That's why I never came out and said we shouldn't have property tax. That's not that thing. But let me just tell you what his rationale was. And then this is the part I think makes total sense when you just think through it. And then thought the solution that I kind of proposed, which is not get rid of property taxes, but was just made a little bit more sense. And so here's his main point, which I think makes a ton of sense. He thinks it's ridiculous. We're talking about homestead here. We're talking about people's homes. We're not talking about investment properties. We're not talking about your second, rent your vacation home or whatever. We're talking about your primary residence, where people own their home outright, right? They pay down their mortgage over 15, 30 years. They're retired. They're on fixed income. This really affects a lot of the lower middle class and lower income. And I got a great example because I think that's what happened to the house that I bought. And you've paid off the entire house, and yet you still have this obligation to pay property taxes 30 years later, right? And property taxes have two very unique features that I don't know, you correct me if I'm wrong, I don't know if there's any other product or service that has this type of feature, which is, number one, it's a tax that you pay when you buy the property that's paid in perpetuity. It's paid every single year. No matter how long you own it for, you pay that property tax every single year, number one. And number two, not only do you pay the property tax every year, it's not actually based on the price. The tax percentage is not based on the price of acquisition, but it's based on a recurring reassessment of the property, probably not as high as fair market value, whatever, but it continues to go up and up. And so you have these scenarios where these fixed income folks, and obviously Florida has a lot of elderly and fixed income folks, they bought their property, 20 years ago, 30 years ago. And think about it, this made me old too, guys. 30 years ago now is 1995, right? So we're not talking about the 60s or the 70s. Like 1995 is 30 years ago. You bought your home for like a couple $100,000 or maybe 150 grand or whatever. And you pay that. Here in California, we pay 1% property tax. You're paying 1% of $150,000, which is like $1,500 a year. And then 30 years from now, that property's now skyrocketed because inflation's getting out of control. And that property has increased, not in value, but in nominal terms, is now worth a couple $1 million. And now I've paid off my home. I'm on a fixed income. I make 30, 40,000. I'm Social Security, I'm pension or whatever. I've paid off my home, which I bought for 150 to 200 grand. And now I got to pay property taxes on a $2 million property because, again, I'm paying property as it goes up and up and up. So that's kind of where
this happened to my neighbor in 10 years, Mauricio. My neighbor bought a property next to us in 2009. It was their dream home. They bought it during prices were really recessed, and it was like $200,000. Within 10 years, their property tax had gone up so much. He's talking to me, basically crying. We have to sell our property because I can't afford the property taxes anymore.
But presumably, if their property taxes went up, it's because the value of the property went up. And I'm not saying there's no judgment here, but presumably, if that happened, they've got a lot of equity in their house because the value went up that they could potentially tap and pay the property taxes.
But then they'd have to pay debt.
That was the issue.
Then they have to pay debt.
The lady I bought this house from, she was on a reverse mortgage because she didn't have enough money. First of all, it's a place, there's a lot of upkeep in this place too. But she's in her 80s probably, and bought this property 30, 40 years ago, and literally it was probably worth less than 100 grand. And she had to start doing a reverse mortgage because she's like, I can't afford all this stuff. She basically got a reverse mortgage from the bank and had racked up $600,000 in debt just to maintain the property, to live, and just to kind of to survive. And so it just made me realize that, like if you buy a car, which is, a substantial, it's something more than your usual everyday purchase. But when you buy a vehicle, even if it's $100,000 vehicle, if you're buying a vehicle and you're paying your sales.
No, sorry, you just broke up there.
Yo, I'm so sorry. So yeah, I'm sorry. I apologize for the starling. So if you buy even $100,000 car, which probably just AJ in this room does that, but when you buy the $100,000 car, you're paying 8% sales tax or whatever, and you pay it once, and you pay it at the point of sale. And so my thought was, I think one of the reasons that doesn't work in property is because obviously 8% of $1 million or $2 million, or that's a big number. And so now it's like, I'm not expecting people to pay, let's just, for math purposes, let's say it's a 10% sales tax or whatever, and you're buying a $2 million home or $1 million home, that's $100,000. That's a lot. So my idea was, hey, why don't you pay that tax, or you get assessed that tax at purchase? So it's 8% of whatever the purchase price is, but instead of paying it all up front, you pay it over 8 years or 10 years or whatever the term was. And so that way you're basically paying about 1% per year, but it's only because you don't want to pay it all in advance. So you're kind of amortizing it over the next 8 years. And so after 8 years, you're done. And if you sell the property before 8 years, then you got to pay the rest of your tax that you owed, when you purchased it. I thought that made a ton of sense from a fairness standpoint, from especially for the fixed income people. Now, of course, that's going to reduce revenues. And Kyle, you mentioned in the thing, well, we're going to pay for roads. Yeah, of course. And I'm not saying that.
Well, so let me don't make my points for me. You don't be rabbit me where you're going to say, oh, like I know you're going to say this stuff.
It just wasn't a good point.
Let me make my point, and then I'll let Jay, because I think Jay's going to do the counterpoint for investors. I'm going to do it from a personal standpoint. So we did go back and forth on this on the chat, and immediately I thought this was a stupid idea. But
then you thought about it and realized you were right.
Then I went through it, but what I did realize actually is it's very different from state to state property taxes. And I didn't realize how different. So I was thinking of this as being done based on the states that I have experience with. So I live in Pennsylvania, and when I pay property tax, my property tax goes to the school district, it goes to the township, and then it goes to the county. My property tax goes directly to my school district. And that's like 80% of their total revenue for the school district comes directly from my property taxes. And so basically, but what I realized is a state like Vermont actually, your property taxes go to the state first, and the state disperses it to the schools. So it actually, as far as considering school systems and equity in school systems and equality, or like whatever you want to call it, between schools, like that's actually a much better system. Because what happens in Pennsylvania is someone like me, I'm like, I want my kids to go to the best school. So I literally just move to the school district that makes the most money. And it creates this inequality between schools, and that's an issue. So immediately I was like, first of all, these schools, the way my property tax is determined is this school sets a budget for their year and what they need, the amount of money. And then that's how they determine how much tax they're going to tax the people. So it's not like, hey, if my property goes up from $1 million to $2 million, that my property tax is going to go from $16,000 to $32,000. That's not the way it works. The way it works is that the school has a budget, and then they say, hey, our budget went up 5% over the last 2 years. We have to increase how many tax dollars we come in to pay for our budget. This is what the millage rate, this is the percentage that each person has to pay based on the value of their property. So if we see massive spikes in property values, the actual percentage or the millage rate that they talk about goes down. And we've seen that in Texas when we started buying multifamily in 2019. And as these property values went way up, our millage came down. And so our actually percentage that we're paying. So that's what I was saying is like, it's not like when you use this argument, and it's the California argument, obviously from the California guy, where you have all these people who bought these properties for peanuts, and then they saw them go way up and the property taxes went way up because California treats it a little bit different. But it's not across state to state. And then I'll finish just my point that you were saying. The other 80% of our taxes go to our schools, but the other percentage for the township, that goes directly towards municipal, like this is funding for your public safety, your planning and zoning, your parks, your roads, facilities, stuff like that. They need that every year. They have a budget every year. And if you somehow all of a sudden we have a real big slowdown and we don't have transactions happening where people are buying and selling houses and it's very low for a few years, how are they going to budget for that? All of a sudden their budget's just going to go out the window because there's no transactions.
Well, why are you allocating that? I mean, there's nothing that says you have to allocate that the money comes from real estate has to go to schools. Why not eliminate the connection altogether? Why don't you give 100% of your sales tax goes to schools instead? That will solve the problem there.
The problem is you don't really own it. Essentially, you don't own property. No one owns any property. No one does. We all lease it from the government.
I look at it differently. That property tax is the one way that you pay for the use of your property. So I have to pay for the roads. I have to pay for the police. I have to pay for the schools that I use. I have to pay for all those things. And those are yearly expenses. Those are yearly upkeep.
Why does it have to be property? What are you doing with my sales tax money? What are you doing with my gas tax be used?
What about a super small state like Delaware? Delaware is right next to Pennsylvania. In Delaware, there's a ton of people who live by me in Pennsylvania and then commute to Delaware and work in Delaware and then come right back. They're probably not they're spending most of their money in Pennsylvania, but they're coming into Delaware, they're commuting, and they're coming right back. So what happens to Delaware when all of a sudden they don't have the same kind of sales? Like, that's why each state has a different system. That's why Florida, Texas doesn't need to have income tax because they get it through property tax. They get it through oil and gas taxes on those. They get it through other places. Each state has a different system based on their size, based on their needs, based on their different things. And that's how the system has evolved. And you can't just all of a sudden get rid of one part of the system and then expect every single state to be able to conform to it.
But there's a dual tax problem. At the end of the day, in the United States, real estate taxes, by the way, that's not like new. This is like the oldest thing ever, right? So the only problem that I have with the real estate tax is the fact that we had real estate taxes so you didn't have income taxes. Like, that was the whole point of it. So when we look at what's happened is, instead of saying, oh, we are going to take out one, right, and do another, they've just continually added on. And it's hard to even, I think, for a lot of us to understand the absolute change in not only the tax code, but how large it is. And so, like, I have a visual here so we can see how much it's changed. So when we're talking about your real estate, you're talking about everything you buy, your income. I mean, it goes on and on and on. It is massive. The tax changes in literally the last 100 years on an American citizen is so big that this is where I think these problems become. People start to go, what am I getting for this? Right? And I'm being taxed astronomical amounts. So when we had a very stable tax system like real estate taxes, right, that was very much state centric. And that was part of the independence. Okay. So there was way more independent. States were more sovereign, and we funded things locally. That makes perfect sense. Your property is a local part, an entity of a local thing. We do all this stuff. What the change in the tax system was the change in the federal tax system. All of a sudden, then, when you're paying huge amounts of your property to taxes, then you're paying income, sales tax, gas tax, and you're paying everything else. So from 1920, it went from 5% to upwards of over 30% on average. 50% of the United States doesn't pay federal taxes. That's an average. And so I think that that's where I start to go, hold on here. I don't own my property. I don't own anything. But I kind of agree with both. Kyle, I agree with you. I like the localized nature of the tax, everything else. But all of a sudden you're taking it from all sides. That's where the issue comes in.
Yeah. I mean, sorry, Jay, I'll just make a quick one. And then I know you got a good point about investors, I think. But I look at it more like a membership fee. Like, you have to, there's certain services, being an American citizen living and choosing to live in a state, choosing to live in a township, choosing to live in a county. There's certain things that you enjoy by living there. And somehow you have to pay for those things. And I look at property tax as your membership fee. And you could say, okay, people renting, they don't have to pay it. Well, the owner has to pay it, and they pass those costs down to the person who's renting. I look at it more as a membership fee that I'm paying for living exactly where I have to live right now.
Before I jump into the point you were making, Kyle, here's my general issue with this. I'm a free market kind of guy, but I also recognize that taxes are a necessary evil. I don't like taxes. None of us like taxes, but we all recognize that, realistically speaking, the libertarian utopia of we all contribute to the roads and the bridges and the infrastructure is not reality. But when it comes to taxes, I think we need to do our best to ensure that taxes don't change the supply and demand characteristics of the market. Basically, we want taxes to kind of exist as quietly and subtly as possible so as they're not creating inefficiencies in the market. And to give Donald Trump props, he came out today or yesterday and made a proposal that we get rid of the capital gains tax on single family houses.
Actually,
right now,
Jay, I do have to correct you on that. And I think the reason that it's coming out of Trump, it was Marjorie Taylor Greene who actually proposed that. And I would have to say this is the first time I've ever agreed with Marjorie Taylor Greene on something, but that law has been in place since 1997. And to the point that AJ and Mauricio have made, the property values have changed drastically since 1997.
Yeah. So she proposed it, but Trump caught on and said, yeah, I like this idea. And I do like this idea where right now you exclude the first 250,000 or 500,000 and MTG and Trump are saying exclude it all. And I love that because it then makes the market more efficient. People don't say, I'm not going to sell my house because I have to do this math, this calculus in my head of, is it worth taking the money and paying the taxes and buying another house or not paying? And it changes the market dynamics. We see the same thing with low interest rates. And I'm not saying this is good or bad. Again, no judgment here, but we see the same thing with low interest rates. If you have a 3% 30-year fixed loan that you got during COVID, you're not selling your house anytime soon unless you absolutely have to. And what we're seeing is that's kind of just tamped down on transactions over the last couple of years. It's destroyed the transaction volume in the market, and it's really knocked supply and demand out of whack since COVID. We run the same risk of that here. If you are paying an 8% tax, whether it's all at once or over 8 years, you now have to do the calculus in your head. Do I want to sell my house in the first 8 years? Because then if I buy a new house, I'm double paying that tax. If I sell my house in exactly 8 years, well, wait a second, I'm just getting into the free portion of this. I can amortize this cost over a longer period of time. So there's more incentive to say, I just paid an 8% premium on my house. Why should I ever sell? And just like a 3% mortgage, people are going to be incentivized to stay in their house longer and never sell because they don't want to sell and then have to pay another 8% premium when they buy the next house. And so my biggest concern about this is that it's going to mess up the supply and demand characteristics in the market, and it's going to change people's behaviors in a way that makes the market a whole lot less efficient than it should be. Again, the same exact way that we saw with lower interest rates, in the same way we see to a much lesser degree with that whole capital gains tax on the sale of single family houses.
Mauricio, what's the compelling arguments against you?
Yeah, I mean, you're calling it a premium, but I mean, it's really it's a tax, right? It's like a sale. What it is a sales tax. What I'm proposing is just like you're going to have a sales tax when you buy the car, you're going to pay a sales tax when you don't have to amortize. You could pay it at close if you wanted to. It's almost like you're getting a loan. It's a hard pill to swallow to pay the 8% all at once because it's such a large thing. But yeah, I mean, then maybe that's the argument that DeSantis is making, which is like, yeah, you're right. So then we should not have any taxes on the properties taxes. Like, there's no other asset class that we do this on, right? I mean, there's no other asset class that you pay, instead of paying taxes at the transaction point, that you pay it in perpetuity.
My problem is market value. When you look at the market value, this happened after 2008. Market values dropped by 60%, but taxes didn't.
But this would change that though. But this wouldn't change. You would owe it at the point of on your closing date. What is it? What did you pay it for? And that's your price. Whether it goes
You're
up
making
or down.
that decision at that time. That's why I agree with that. The idea that I'm buying and I don't know what the market will do, so I have no idea where my taxes will go, but they'll go up. And if the values go down, they're not going to lower my taxes. We have this in commercial real estate. We're sitting here going, the taxes are based upon value, but the asset's value is based upon income, but that's not how the taxes work. So now all of a sudden you're saying the asset's worth 5 million, but it's worth 3 on the marketplace, but I'm being taxed at 5. So now my income is all screwed up because the tax obligation has nothing to do with the reality.
Not only income, cap rates. Like we're going through it right now. Texas is having huge property. We just settled our property tax protest on one property from 2023. And it's so backed up because property values have come down, right? And how they evaluate these property taxes is they obviously look at comparable values. And it's almost like people are delaying because the only properties that are transacting right now aren't the flagship properties. They're the properties that are in distress. So properties that are in distress, what are going to happen to the values? Well, a property in our area that's comparable size to ours, 300 something units, just like ours, and that's in distress. If a bunch of those transact, then hey, we're going to go into the taxing authority and be like, hey, look at these comparable sales that just happened here. That's the value of our property. It's not the value that you have. It's the value of these distressed properties. And so we're having to and obviously the taxing authority is like, well, no, these are distressed. And you're like, well, it's comparable. These are the only comparable sales we have in the last 6 months. In the last year are all these ones that you're calling distressed. And so it's a huge fight that is happening in some of these states because the values have gone down 20% on some of these. And the taxing authorities don't want to, cut their revenue down by 20%.
Lots of the taxes are going up. Their values are dropping and we're getting tax increases. That happened to us. We have properties that I'm like, the value's down 2-3 million and you just gave me a tax increase. That kills the property owner because the income is dropping. And all of a sudden you're going, the government is killing our business because it's saying that something is happening that isn't even happening. And it's a way that they can use to get more money. They just make it up. We had to fight this legal battle with the state of Idaho, and we had to get passed in both the Congress and the Senate to have a way to enforce appraisers, because when the appraisers put a value on a property and they say it's the value, there was no way for you to, when you went and argued it, so it's like, okay, even if we're wrong, what do you do? There's no mechanics, and the government doesn't build in mechanics to make it easy for you to adjust tax bases downwards. And so it's completely artificially skewed to government entities. And then every year, they'll reassess that thing up. And then all of a sudden when it goes down.
Oh, for sure. They gave us a 10% increase on the one property. Everything that's going on in commercial, they gave us a 10% increase. So we fought it. And obviously, you're seeing decreases of what they give you in your taxes of 20-30% in some cases, because they have to relent and say hey, I can't, this is not the value. But it's and that's in Texas, where Texas it's like standard practice to fight your taxes, because Texas is
it a disclosure state?
Texas is a non-disclosure state. So basically the way the taxing authority is like, hey, we don't know what these transactions are going for. We're going to tax high and we're going to make you prove that your value is lower. So Texas has become a very litigious state as far as taxes are concerned. But I can't even imagine some of these other states that are not really used to having to, litigate these taxes every year.
That's like states in Idaho and other ones out west.
Yeah, if you see a value decrease in 20%, you're going to get your next tax bill and they're going to say, hey, your value went up 5%, and you're looking at all the sales and you're like, my value went down 20.
And you don't have 3 years to do it. That's the problem. You pay them the increased tax for the years until it's resolved. So
you better have the reserves to cover.
You better have the reserves or you're in trouble.
You better have the reserves to cover the overpayment in taxes. You better have the reserves to cover your escrows for your interest rate caps, and you better have the reserves to pay for your insurance on those values. And like we're having to set aside $1 million for all of those different things. And then, like, then you're like, okay, well, investors, why aren't they hitting their pref returns? Why aren't they getting their, well, because we're having to set aside all this money for shit that we don't even owe.
Hey, Kyle, let's get back on topic though, because we're talking about, you guys got off on your little commercial.
Oh, sorry. Did we talk too much about actionable stuff that's happening in real estate market? My mistake.
I want to go
Let's
back.
go back to your fantasy scenario. Let's go back to your fantasy scenario, which, by the way, I did want to point out, as much as I act like your scenario is crazy, Canada does charge tax. So it's not like any other state. Now, Canada only does it on new sales or significant.
So what does Canada do? I didn't know that. What does Canada do then for home sales?
So Canada, it's complicated because it's the same. Each state has their own tax, and each province has their own tax. But Canada designates new and resale homes as different things. If you are selling a new construction home, you are subject to tax at the same rate, to your point, as normal sales taxes.
In addition to an annual 1 or 2%, or is this in lieu of?
Yes, in addition to.
No, I'm not talking about that. I mean, I guess I want to bring it back.
I'm just saying it's not crazy. Your idea of implementing I guess we have it. Every state has some sort of. I shouldn't say every state. Texas doesn't. But like,
how do you? I mean, I guess I'm just going to bring it back to the mythical. Or I mean, again, DeSantis is from Florida, so he's got a lot of older folks in his state. But like you're talking to the fixed income person, right? They're making $30,000 a year, $40,000 a year on their fixed pension, Social Security, whatever it is. And to your point, they moved into a neighborhood. They bought a house for a couple $100,000. They are paying for the roads at the time of sale. And now fast forward 30 years, they can't afford to pay the taxes because the taxes for some reason have been going up as the property value, which is just, they're not selling. So it's not like they're getting, and I mean, to your point, Jay, they could, I guess, refinance or get some cash or rate. But the whole point is that they didn't want to have any debt. They wanted to be like, hey, I'm going to pay off my home. And then I can just, I just need enough money to live. So what do you tell that person then? Like, just, hey, you got to move. Sorry, it's tough. You got to go move to Arkansas. No offense to Arkansas.
I agree. I think that's a big problem. It's going to become a bigger problem with the baby boomers. Much bigger.
We still have to solve the problem of where does the money come from? And yeah, we've got that utopia of let's spend less money and let's balance the budget without property taxes, blah, 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 blah.
38% of Florida's income comes from property tax. So I don't know where they were filling that gap.
I heard it was 1/5, but yeah, it's like 20% is what I heard. But
yeah, just to put things into perspective in Florida, let's say we wanted to collect the same amount of tax and we took all of the property tax and we moved it over into sales tax. So we wanted to offset no property tax, which is what the state legislature is.
Yeah, and I'm not proposing that. Just to be clear.
Well, but DeSantis is proposing that, and the Florida state legislature is.
I'm not proposing that.
I know. So, but it's a starting point. So in Florida, if we did do that, I think there's something like 43 billion in property taxes collected every year, 36 billion in sales taxes. So basically, we would have to increase sales taxes by about 1 point double plus another 10%. So basically, we're taking sales tax from, I think it's dropping to 5.5%, but at 6% where it is today, and raising it up to 13 or 14%. And so we can get rid of property taxes if we raise sales tax to 14%. But then there's the second order effects. You raise sales tax to 14%, and now you're going to slow the economy down because people aren't going to consume as much. They're not going to buy as much. People aren't going to go out and buy a new car. They're not going to go out and buy a gold watch, a Rolex, because
I mean, I guess by the same argument though, people's net income should go up, right? Because they're not paying as much on property tax, or even renters, the people who they're renting from aren't paying as much, so they can lower the rents. And so theoretically, by the free market argument, they're going to have more money to spend.
We could lower rates substantially if we didn't have to pay. Taxes are massive.
Yeah. And so, yeah, again, I think there are a lot of second and third order effects in there.
You're picking on the sales tax, but again, California is obviously the extreme, but like, we pay a 10% gasoline tax. How much is your gasoline tax? Like, you could bump it up to whatever you're paying, 4%, bump it up to 6%. You could tax this, you could tax that. I mean, you could have an income tax. You don't have an income. Maybe you have an income tax of 2% or 3%. I mean, there's different other things.
Yeah. So this is national or state averages across the nation. It looks like a 2020 chart. For those that are listening and not watching, basically 32% of all taxes come from state and local taxes come from property tax. 23 or 24% come from sales tax. So basically, property tax, sales taxes would have to go up about 2.4% in order, or 2.4 times to cover property taxes. But then you could take it from higher income tax, state income taxes. You could take it from higher corporate income taxes. And then there's things like the gasoline tax and all the other taxes. So there are a lot of places for it to come from. But let's keep in mind, property tax across the country accounts for almost a third of all state and local taxes. So other taxes are going to have to go up considerably. It's not a small percentage of the total tax we're paying.
Well, but I think this is one of the problems that we have. You look at these taxes and we go, okay, I think, first of all, there's this idea, well, we just can't do without them. And then there's this other idea, like where the United States, for almost its entire history, did not have the vast majority of the taxes that we have. In the last 50 years, we have doubled our taxation. Like, we are taxing because we can. They find new places to tax. It trickles down. Think about.
But is that really true, AJ? Because you showed a chart earlier that basically showed that the bulk of growth in taxes was from 1920 to 1960, and it's basically plateaued after the last few years.
No, it's spiked. Even in the last 4 years, it's gone up 2-3 percentage points in the last 4 years. That's the average on the individual. Once again, 50% of the United States doesn't even pay federal taxes.
Yeah, but AJ, if taxes double, but the cost of everything has doubled, then that makes sense. The problem isn't the taxes. The problem is that the cost of everything doubled. So
no, hold on. But when you are taxing goods, services, when you're taxing income, why do you think the taxes that I have to pay employees, that I have to pay on my products, the taxes that I have to pay on the gas to get my product, why do you think the cost goes up? This idea that, products go up or taxes, that's not, it's all cost. We all have to pay cost. The point is, like, that cost structure that we have and that tax basis, when you're doubling the taxes, I don't think there's any person that would think we get double.
If I'm reading between the lines here, I don't think your problem is the tax system. I think your problem is government spending, because those taxes have increased this much because of how much money is required to run these governments, local, state, and even federal. And they've found different ways. It doesn't matter. Like, there's a million ways to skin a cat, right? And if you look at a state, like Florida has no income tax, but they have to offset that with their expenses some way. So they pay property taxes and sale taxes.
The taxes that we pay are to justify the spending. And this is the problem. That we don't need the taxes. The problem is they spent, and now they've got to figure out ways to get it because they spent it. And most of the stuff they spend on are not, we don't get it in the future. So what we're doing now is we're increasing tax load, property, every other kind of tax, to pay for spending that's already happened that we get nothing from. That system, right, is not sustainable. So you can't get rid of property taxes. We now have to have income taxes. We have to have sales tax. You get taxed on your income how many times? Like, it's.
And not only that, now we need tariffs. So like we're coming up with just more different ways that we can.
And we used to have tariffs to avoid doing the sales tax. That was the point. Tariffs.
But now we have them all. That's your point. So now we need them all. We can't get rid of any of them because we spend too much money.
Right. But one of the things I would point out, your graph, I don't know who put up the graph that showed that 32% of our revenue came from. Again, I'm not proposing getting rid of the property tax. I'm just proposing the change in how you do it. I would argue that you may not lose that many taxes by changing this, because you guys know this better than anyone. The average, granted it's the mortgage, but the average mortgage, even though people get 30-year mortgages, the average mortgage is like 7 or 8 years, right? So maybe you incorporate something of a mortgage thing as well. But if every 8 years you're moving, then you're going to be paying basically the same amount of tax, because you're paying the 8% now and you're paying the 8% later, which is what you're
for the record, Mauricio, what you're proposing already exists. Like, we already have many states, if not most states, have transfer taxes. And so all you're saying is get rid of property taxes and increase the transfer taxes.
Well,
right?
yeah, well, yes and no. I mean, that's right. You're in Pennsylvania, and Pennsylvania is a very unique. They have like a 4% transfer tax. It's ridiculous. I'm in California. We don't have
one on either side. Put the seller pays one, the
no,
buyer
but then
pays one.
there's state fed. I mean, I've as an asset protection guy trying to transfer properties into LLCs, I always ran into this transfer tax problem because they want to transfer it from their personal name into an LLC for asset protection purposes, and depending on the particular county, you get hit with state, county, and then local transfer taxes that it could add up to like 4%, which is a huge.
Yeah, if you're in the borough of Philadelphia, it can add up.
But yeah, you're right. To that point, it's not a transfer tax. I'm talking about, dude. All I'm saying, I don't understand why this seems like an out of the whack. And this is kind of the thought experiment, because what DeSantis was saying seemed very logical to me, which is we have a sales tax for every other sales and product out there. Like, why don't we just have the same system that we have for 99.999% of the other products? Have it on real estate, charge whatever your state income tax. We're at like freaking, I don't even know what I might have, 9.25%, 10, whatever. You might be 4%. Some other state might be 6%. Just charge whatever your state income, your sales tax is, charge that on the sale of the property. But because it's a huge number, give them the option to amortize it over 8 years. They're probably going to move within 8 years anyway. So then they got to pay the same amount that they would have paid anyway, except it does protect the fixed income individual who says, look, I bought my property 30 years ago. I was paying this much money in property taxes at the time. Now, not only do I have to continue to pay it in perpetuity, but the price goes up. And I bought my house at 200 grand. My book value is 200 grand, not 2 million. Why am I paying taxes on 2 million when I bought this thing for 200 grand 30 years ago?
To Jay's point, that's a deterrent to move. And what if people just like transaction volume just keeps going down, 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 down. And then all of a sudden you have a bunch of people sitting in their homes, not paying any property taxes. So that the government's not collecting that money, but they still have to pay their police. They still have to pave their roads. They still have to run their schools. They have to do all those things, which are yearly expenses, which is why it makes sense for me for people to pay yearly for things that are they enjoy in their area, just kind of like a membership fee for living in that area. And I know there are certain states, because as I looked up, like certain states treat these property taxes and how they're used very differently. So there's certain states where you're going to have big problems, like California, which is why California had to change their laws to limit the property taxes, especially on elderly. But at the same point, I look at it that like I enjoy a lot of things. Like if my daughter gets sick, I call 911 and they show up to my door and take her to the hospital. Like that's something that's something that has to get paid for. And so like to me,
It doesn't have to get paid from the property taxes. It can get paid from.
it's got to get paid some way though. So why we just because there's always going to be cases where certain taxes disproportionately affect certain people. You can't like every single system's not perfect.
Yes,
and
but
I guess
the system of owning something that you've already paid for and then losing it because the government is requiring that is different than every other tax we have. Other taxes, your income goes down or you already bought something. The government's not coming back 15
even
years
a
later.
car though, like every year a car, you got to register it, you got to pay that. And to Mauricio's point, when you pay gas, you got to pay tax on the gas. It's a 10% gas tax. You got to pay, like it's a state requirement that you have insurance. There's a lot of requirements.
And you have to have those things for your home.
Okay, so let's look at the math. Let's look at the math side of this again. So one of the advantages to the government, and I'm going to take the government side for a second, pretending like the government like actually needs to collect this money, which obviously we can all argue that if they spent our money,
We're assuming that the government is efficiently using these
exactly,
tax dollars.
and we're happy with them. We're happy paying taxes because they use the money so wisely.
Suspend your disbelief
It's
here.
a real
Yes.
thought experiment here.
Yes. So to take the government side, one of the benefits of property tax over sales tax is sales tax requires legislative overhaul to change. So you're not going to see sales tax go from 6% to 6.5% to 7% to 9%. Like it's not going to change every year based on inflation or based on other economic factors. Property taxes, on the other hand, can change on an annual basis. In some places, I think they change on a semi-annual basis. And so basically, if the value of property is going up, if people are, from the government's standpoint, again, I'm not making this argument, the government could be making this argument. If people are benefiting from the value of their property going up, okay, now they're going to pay more for schools. They're going to pay more for roads. They're going to pay more for bridges and all this infrastructure. And
or just the cost of everything's going up.
Or the cost of everything's going up. Basically, but from a math standpoint, if I buy a house today and I lock in this 8% on today's value, I'm a fan of saying if you buy real estate today, in 10 years, it's almost certain that that property is going to be worth more than it was when you bought it. Because historically, in any 10-year period, real estate only goes up. So one of the downsides for the government is I'm locking in this 8% rate based on the purchase price today, 1% based on today's price. But in 8 years, I would likely be paying more in property taxes because the value would have gone up in that period of time. So even if magically that 8% or that 8 years is exactly the length of time people own a house, so it seems like we break even. We're not really breaking even because people are paying that 8% on the 8-year previous purchase price, if that makes sense.
But the value, it's only a nominal value, because the value to the person who's not planning on selling the home, the value is still the same. It's a 3-bedroom house. It's in this neighborhood. It's like the value hasn't really changed. It's just the price has changed.
The assumption is wrong with how we value. The assumption is that real estate prices are going up, the economy is doing good. That is not true. Real estate prices go up to the supply and demand. Look at today. If real estate prices rise because we don't have inventory.
Your dollar is losing purchasing power. That's a big piece of it, not necessarily supply and demand.
Yeah, well, but supply and demand is driving mass amounts. In the contraction, that's not going to be fixed for decades. So when you look at it, the assumption is real estate prices go up. It means we're all prosperous. But that's actually not true. And we've seen this in countries all over the world. Look at Australia. Look at New Zealand. Look at Canada. So real estate prices increase does not correlate to prosperity. And so all of a sudden now you have a tax basis that is incrementally increasing, that is completely hurting the people that can't afford it, that need shelter, somewhere to live. And two, the idea that they could sell and go down and afford it, that actually doesn't exist today. So now what you've done is you've made it unaffordable for them to live in their home. They can't move because it's unaffordable for them to move because interest rates are now up. So you've created a system where the government gets theirs, and it gets theirs increasingly more, regardless of anything and regardless of the individuals, regardless of prosperity. And that makes sense as long as there is a correlation to everything, as long as Social Security is going up, but that doesn't happen.
For the record, but that's also only very local, because like, I'll just use an example because we have a bunch of properties in Houston. Like, the property values from 2020 to 2023 kept going up. And Houston, for the school district, has a budget that they have to, they collect taxes on property taxes to fill out their budget, and they have a set budget. And so if properties values keep going up, they reduce the amount of the tax percentage that they put in. So just as an example, on our one property, so the 2020 tax millage rate, so this is the adopted tax rate per $100. 2020 it was 1.13, and then 2021 it was 1.09. Then it was 1.03 in 2022, and then 2023 it was 0.86. So the point is that they were only collecting the amount of money that they needed to run their schools, and it was the value of the actual properties was irrelevant. Because if you just assume that every single property, all the ships are rising at the same rate, then the tax rates are actually coming down. So the amount of property taxes aren't disproportionately raising according to the actual value of the homes. It's just the amount of tax that people are paying is just going up as the costs are raising to run this school or run the municipality for the social services and stuff like that.
Okay, I poured like a half a bottle of Kahlua into this coffee, and I've been chugging it. So let me get this point out before I get too buzzed to say it. Yeah, before
I'm already done my bourbon.
so a lot of real estate investors listening to this podcast, I presume. And so there's another aspect to this whole thing is the impact on us as investors. And I think this is kind of important. If we are in an investing business that is based on transactions, so maybe it's flipping houses where you're going to perform a transaction every 6 or 12 months, or even the business that AJ and Kyle and I are in, where we buy a property and we sell it in some period of time that is probably, and I assume this for AJ, maybe I'm wrong, but we're selling it in some period of time that's less than 8 years. Basically, we're being hit with this tax that's going to hit our margin. So
or if you're a legal services that you are transaction based and you create legal documents for every single transaction that happens, that could hit you as well.
Yeah. So let's imagine a situation where I'm flipping a house. In my experience, the typical margin on a house flip is about 15%. Now, let's say we incur an 8% tax in there because I'm paying 8%, even though I'm only holding the property for 3, 4, 5, 6 months.
It's not a homestead. I'm talking about homesteads, not investment property.
So investment property would not be subject to this tax?
Correct. Well, it's the system. Yeah, that's different. Investment property.
It's a reverse homestead. Homestead usually gets a break on their taxes. Mauricio is proposing that a homestead pays more.
So everybody's going to be arguing, I'm not living there. This is an investment property.
No. The investment property can continue with whatever its annual tax like it is right now. I'm just saying that for homestead, this is a specific, just like you have homestead asset protection, this is a specific tax on the homestead. This is a taxing system on homestead versus investment. Investments are a completely different thing. It doesn't affect the fixed income person who bought their house and owns the house outright over 30 years.
Basically, he's saying you cap your total property taxes at some level.
Kyle, as we've been, not to interrupt you, Jay, but like your argument of the membership, that resonates with me. We're like, okay, look, you've got your neighborhood, but I guess my point there is if you need a membership, why is it based on your property values versus your income? So that should just be an income tax. Like I know Florida doesn't have an income tax, but guess what? Maybe that's not the way to go. It's just a marketing thing. But
I mean, yes, theoretically they should be correlated.
I'm not talking about a state income tax. You're talking about your local county or even city, like your city tax or county tax should be paying for the schools and this, or a neighborhood tax or whatever, because we're paying for that specific. You're talking about I don't know about the roads. I think the road should be a gasoline tax because the people who use the roads the most would use the most gas, and they should be paying.
Well, that's
more.
becoming an issue with electric cars, by the way, because the people are fighting. Electric cars don't pay for gas at all, and they're like, a lot of these state taxes are collected through gasoline taxes, and none of the electric cars are having to pay for it. So that's become an issue. But
yeah, although how do you make electricity? Most people don't realize this, but you need gas or some kind of gas of
right, but there's no tax on gas to my house, and my house charges my Tesla. So
yeah, but you use electricity, and how does electricity get made? Anyway, that's a different topic. My point is, it just again going full circle. We've beaten this to death, and we should probably wrap it up here. But my point is simply that you're asking somebody to pay taxes that is based on an asset they have no control over this asset going up and up versus like an income tax would be great because an income tax, look, I make 30 grand a year, 40 grand a year. Sure. Tax me or whatever you need to do on my 40 grand versus me or somebody else that you're taxing Jay on $3 million in income versus, anybody else who's at 30 grand, 30 grand.
You say asset. I want to make this very clear. We keep things like asset. These are homes. These are homes that people spent their entire lives, raised their children in. These are homes that they've been budgeting forever, and they had no idea that home prices would triple in 10 years because the government prints $30 trillion. Like, these are homes that people can't afford, yet they have to live in them. And they have to leave their community, their church, their schools. They have to leave where they live because they can't afford to pay the government because their home went up 4 times in value, which they don't get. That doesn't do anything for them. I think it's fundamentally different. This isn't right. I mean, when you're talking about income tax, it fluctuates.
I mean, I guess I'm gonna sound like an asshole here, but that's okay. Sometimes I do. That's free market happening in their area, whether it's
that's not free market.
No. Whether it's
Government
gentrification
intervention.
or
That's government intervention.
That's government
but
intervention.
but the mechanism of what's happening is basically their area is becoming more expensive. So if it was one of those things where their grocery prices tripled or their other things that are their cost of living is going way up because their area was too expensive, we wouldn't have an issue with it. The point is that their area is becoming in demand for some reason, or like their area has become more expensive than it should.
That's every place in America. That's you're talking about too. You're talking what groceries, cost of living. Okay, well, I can first of all, I can choose. That's one-time taxes. And two, most of those things, as long as I have a home, I'm not required to. I don't need. So it could be more expensive or not, but this is where I live. I've got it paid off.
The alternative that we're arguing is basically that same area who's collecting those taxes to pay for their government's expenditures. The issue isn't that the properties or taxes are going up. It's that area is spending too much money, and the way they're choosing to get it from is property taxes. So if we switch that to income taxes, or we switch that to some other tax, the same thing would happen to that area. That area would have to pay more in taxes some other way. And yes, there might be some people who are sitting in their houses who wouldn't have that run up, but it would also if you change that, it would also change other people's situations where they would have to move out of the area because it's too expensive for them, or there's lower income people who would have to move out of the area. Whatever the solution that you come up with, it's going to create problems or marginalize some group of people. And so to me, you can't just pick, okay, here's these poor one single group, insert group now. We have to change the whole system, when what happens is that changing the system becomes just as bad.
That is the tax code. You just defined. You're picking subgroups of people and charging them. 50% of America pays no federal taxes. The 1% pays 40. The top 10% pays 65% of all taxes. You are literally defined.
I'm not arguing that they're picking and choosing who's the people who are benefiting and who's getting affected. But I'm saying by changing it, all you're doing is changing that variable. All you're doing is changing who's benefiting and who's getting marginally affected. Because if you change it to income tax, somebody who's rich and figured out a way to not pay income tax, or is going to have the high-priced accountants to figure out, hey, the property tax went up or the income tax went up by this much. How do we restructure our businesses and move them to different areas and do that stuff to pay less? They're going to be the ones who benefit. And who's going to get screwed? It's probably going to be the people who spend all their money on groceries and rent every month, and they're paying more in the sales tax. So someone's going to get screwed no matter what.
So the point is, we're talking about variable taxes based upon how much you make, how much you consume, everything else, as opposed to fixed increasing that has nothing to do with what you get. Nothing. In fact, you already own it. You already paid for it. You get nothing more, but it's a requirement to live. Like that's the equivalent of saying, as
it's a requirement to live, but not live in that house. There, like the point
which
is,
you own. It's
you've
yours.
You've raised your kids there. You've got like
government eviction. It's government mandated eviction, kicking you out.
I mean, but if you increase the sales tax, then food is a requirement to live.
You can
buy it's the same thing.
That there is a difference between a forced tax. There's nothing I can do about my property tax. I got to pay it, otherwise I'm going to lose my house. Consumption tax, sales tax, I can choose to consume.
You can choose to not eat.
Well, no, but I can consume less.
How much?
Yeah, I only make $30,000 a year. I'm not going to.
And food prices have gone down in half. Like the cost expenditure for the average American on food has gone way down. So we consume more at a cheaper price. Home prices, it's gone the opposite. So now we can actually consume way more food. We can pay more taxes on it. It's gone down substantially when houses have gone.
But taxes on everything, though. There's way more requirements to survive and live than just shelter. And
it's one of the top two.
I know it's one of the top two, but all of the others, if you increase sales tax, then all of the others are going to go up, and it's going to marginalize, and it's going to screw over a different group of people. And that's all I'm saying is the government has to get their money. They are spending X amount of dollars, and they need Y amount of dollars to pay for it. And they're going to get it some way, and someone's going to get screwed no matter what. And this is just the current people who are getting screwed by it. And what I'm saying is, I'm not saying it's right. I'm just saying someone's going to get screwed every single way because the government's spending too much money.
And it's how you get screwed, I guess, is the point.
All right, Carl, you got a top 10 or what?
You just got to, yeah, hold on. I got to go find it. Make a final point here.
Is it a top 10 counties that pay the most school-related taxes or something?
I can do that. Actually, I do have that list somewhere.
I think if you have kids that are under 18, you've got to pay a school tax for your neighborhood.
What if your kids are really dumb?
Then you have to pay twice as much.
That's a good point. Okay, if they're really
You're taking up too much resources. Like, I'm sorry. I don't know what to tell you.
Okay, so I when in doing this research here, I actually came across something really interesting, and I want to get your guys' opinion on it, because it ranked the top states for property tax equity, and then it said it was the best. These are the best systems to the worst systems. But the way it
Wait, what do you mean by property tax equity?
so it's basically, AJ is going to hate this one. It's basically equality. So it's like every single school, they say the best school systems, every single school gets the same kind of funding. So it doesn't matter if you live on this side. So in Pennsylvania, there's a very famous one where it's Route 1 on the outskirts of Philadelphia, and it's literally one block to the next. The tax difference is massive, and the house sizes are massive, and the school systems, the differences are massive. It's just one side of a street or another. And that's obviously, as you could tell, so Pennsylvania didn't rank very high on this list. So they ranked the top and the best best tax systems for schools as the ones that have the most basically equal. Yeah, exactly. This list says equity, and that's just why the system I love. And so I have the top 10 on that. But then I would also argue best system is relative to where you're coming from, because someone like me, who I literally picked my house and where I want to live because I want to send my kids to the number one elementary school in the state. So I picked where to live based off of that. So at the same point, Pennsylvania is listed 44 out of 50 as far as best school system. But at the same time, I'm benefiting from that. So would I say Pennsylvania is one of the worst? No, because I'm benefiting from it.
Florida is probably a lot worse than Pennsylvania, and we did the exact same thing. We like literally picked the place we want to be based on elementary, middle, and high school.
Right. So I guess, what would you guys rather hear? The top 10 best for what they consider the most, to Jay's point, homogenous systems, or the top 10 worst?
How about 5 and 5? Let's be crazy. 2 top 5s.
The 5 best. So the ones that have the best statewide systems. So number 1 is Vermont. So they basically, they're the ones I mentioned before, where the statewide education tax is collected by the state instead of the local municipalities, and then redistributed based off of, equally amongst their. Hawaii is actually
doesn't Vermont like have like 38 people in it?
Yeah. Well, I also thought it was interesting that
they all work at Ben and Jerry's.
I was about to say, I wonder how the results of this are. Like,
well,
just because they have the best equity doesn't mean
I didn't have time to research this, AJ, but I think one of the results is why does Vermont have such good private schools, right? Because people basically say, hey, if you're going to make every school equal and I want my kids to have an advantage, I'm going to send them to private school.
Not even an advantage. They just want good schools.
Right. True. I was giving them the benefit of the doubt. We're doing another thought experiment. Hawaii, number 2. Hawaii is actually one of the states that has a statewide tax, property tax. So it's not local. It's not. I thought that was super interesting. I think it's only like 0.32, but that's probably because property values are so high. Number 3, Mass. I never say the full word because people make fun of how I say it. Massachusetts. Number 4, Minnesota. And then I had to think about it though. I can't just say it off the cuff. And then number 5 is Maryland. Actually, Jay spent some time there. So
one of the reasons we went there was for the schools.
Yeah, the state pays a larger share of school costs in the lower wealth areas there. And then the top 5 worst. I'll throw in a shout out to Pennsylvania because it didn't make the 5. It was number 44. But 5, Alabama. 4, Mississippi. 3, South Dakota. 2, Nevada. And number one, worst,
Louisiana.
Arizona.
Really?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Apparently, Arizona's school funding is completely reliant on local property and sales taxes. There you go. So if you're in Arizona, pay attention to where you live. And also, fun little tidbit, doing this exercise as a real estate investor actually was a good exercise because it must be just the areas I've invested in historically where one of the top indicators of whether or not I'm going to invest in a property is I look at school districts. Or when I say I look at it, my wife does all this work. She's, I do barely any work. But she looks at school districts as an indicator of, whether this is a good area to invest in. But I didn't realize that there's probably a bunch of states and probably a bunch of areas where school districts aren't really as important. So it shouldn't be one of my top 3 things that I look at.
Well, areas like Florida, some of these other ones, I mean, I was shocked how many private schools are there. Like, they're everywhere. Like, everywhere.
Pennsylvania, you want to know a weird thing that I noticed in Pennsylvania? Pennsylvania is the only area across the country, I've lived all over the country, where when someone says, where did you go to school? They don't mean university. They mean high school.
Yeah.
That's how prevalent, like your high school, like your private school, like
that's how Idaho is.
Yeah.
Because people would say, what school did you go to? We're talking, Eagle. Because we didn't, especially growing up, there was no private schools. So that.
But I've never seen that before where it's just an unwritten thing. Like I'll meet someone at a meetup, never talked to them before. And they'll be like, what school did you go to? I'll be like, I went to Colgate. And they're like, I'm like, yeah, Colgate University, upstate New York. And they're like, oh, no. Like, what high school did you go to? And I'm like,
yeah,
well,
because most people where you live, Kyle, don't go to college.
Yeah. And then what about the AJ, this is close to your heart at some point, but shouldn't the homeschoolers get to opt out of all those taxes since we're not using the school systems?
Oh, that is a big beef that I have. I'm so anti this.
All right, let's hold
it's
that.
So freaking ridiculous.
Let's not go down this road.
Are we gonna have the school credits issue where people basically you get credits of your property taxes to go to whatever school you want?
Credits are coming out more and more in all the states because school participation's just tanking.
Wasn't that the Betsy DeVos thing? Like she was a flurry where she came in, everyone's like, oh my God, she's going to absolutely tank the whole education system. And it was like 1 month, I would talk about Betsy DeVos and then you never heard her name again the rest of time. I've never heard her name again. All right, good discussion. Plugs.
Hypothetical?
You got one?
I got one.
Let's do it.
Okay, here you go. $1 billion. Do you do this or not?
Yes, I'm doing it.
Listen to it.
I'm in.
As long as my family members stay alive in the scenario, I'm taking the $1 billion.
I'm in.
So $1 billion, but everybody on the planet disappears for 10 years, and you have to survive alone on the planet for 10 years. If you die, you never come back. Your family never knows what happens to you. You live for 10 years. You come back at your same age, same health.
No one knows what happened.
Nobody knows what happened. You have $1 billion.
Everything's paused.
The earth continues. The earth continues on.
But your age is paused?
I was going to say, is your age paused? Because I feel like that changes the answer.
Let's say you are in perfect health.
I'm in perfect health? Done. I'm doing it.
Wait.
Let's say you pause at your current age and health.
Pause at my current age?
Yep.
And it's like a wasteland, right? I'm assuming
No. People just disappear. It's just
but what I'm saying is shit stops working, right?
Oh yeah. Absolutely. Things will stop working. Nuclear reactors will melt down.
Can I go to Can I go to my neighbor's property and kill a cow and skin the cow and eat the meat of the cow?
Yep.
How long do I have to prepare?
Let's say you've got 24 hours.
I mean,
I want to do that just for the fun of it. Now, 10 years though is a long time. If I could do 3 years or 2.
24 hours might be too short for me to figure out where the best prepper is. You got to figure out. There's people who've been preparing this.
Go to any store. Life. Go to your Cabela's, dude, and just start pulling out guns and
what I'm saying is there's people who've been preparing for this scenario their whole life. I just got to figure out where they live, right? You just got to go.
Dude, if you have access to everything, think about going to any sports store.
AJ, not everybody has access to a rifle right now. They might be.
Here's the thing: nobody's going to kill you. You don't have to worry about dying.
I got to worry about animals.
You have to worry about animals. And here's the other thing. You have to worry about disease.
You got to go hunt.
But if I can get into a pharmacy, that's the thing is everybody vanished. I could walk into any store. I could get enough freeze-dried food from walking into one store to last me years. And like, then I can get guns, go to the pharmacy and just start pulling out all the antibiotics, everything that I could ever
fall
want.
down and slash your leg and need surgery or something.
Go shoot a cow.
Okay, that's a good
That's
point.
why I'm saying if you find a prepper's house that basically he's been prepared for that. He's got his own little garden. He's got all this solar panel. He's on, his plumbing is all hooked up and stuff. If I could find that up, 10 years, let's do it. I would work out pretty hard too. I'd be in great shape. Oh, come back. My wife would be like she would wake up the next morning and all of a sudden her husband's just jacked and like
tan jacked and just like,
you know what? If it was just the four of us, I'd do it for $500 million.
If it was the four of us, I'd do it for free. That would be a fun
yes,
time.
exactly. I'm in.
Hang out with your four buddies for 10 years.
Grab the cars. Come on down. Let's hang out.
AJ, you're getting the worst of this deal. Because we're just going to drag you down.
We're all flying in.
We create our own social nights, and it would be awesome.
We'd have 24 hours to get to each other.
Go grab like all the cool cars we want and like stock up all this gas and just like.
We might have to have a vote on that because like something that's that dangerous, I might have to say we got to last the 10 years. It's like
You're like there's got to be some plans here.
And then the 10 years comes up. It's like, can we do another 2 years? Can we
We'll take the extension.
I'll give back half the money if I can do this for a couple more years.
How much do the extensions cost on this loan?
We pay it back for extensions.
Okay, one more hypothetical.
No, that was a fun one. We got to end on that, Jay. I don't save that for next week. Plugs. What do you got, Mauricio?
Dude, I don't know if you guys can still hear me. I got to fix my internet thing, but no, coaching with Mauricio. Just go to coachingwithmauricio.com. I'm still doing my weekly coaching. It's been awesome.
Did you keep the name of it the same, or is it?
Oh, it's called the Elite. It's called Elite Inner Circle, and we're working through a compliance program, like an audit file, so that when you join, by the time you're done, you're gonna have a complete audit file of everything you need to do to pass SEC scrutiny. So it's developing really nicely. So if you're interested, just go to coachingwithmauricio.com, and I'll send you the details and see if it's a fit.
They're also working on their internet.
One of these days, Mauricio, you'll be able to afford good internet. AJ, what do you got, buddy?
You know what? Go check out our tech fund. We're still raising for it. That's what I think. Yeah, go check out the tech fund, diversified tech fund, 3 different software companies that we own and use in our businesses and everything else. So go check it out. Go to cedarcreekcapital.com and then right there you can go into it.
Jay, what do you got?
I'm plugging next week's episode. We're going to be doing our mid-year prediction episode.
Oh, really?
I knew if I didn't say it here, you guys wouldn't let me do it.
I love that you snuck that in. So like I'm committing.
I don't want to do this.
Why? Everybody loves our predictions episodes. They're like our best viewed episodes.
But like they do realize in this, what's going on in the economy and everything global, everything that's going on, like we're just making shit up, right?
You just hate the fact that the 4 of us have been wrong about everything every time for 3 years now.
That's what I like. How can you predict anything right now? Like
But it's fun talking about.
I feel like we're just taking a shot in the dark that maybe we get it right so we can clip it later and be like, Jay was right about everything.
Duh.
No wonder we've had no clips.
Exactly.
I just want to be able to rub in the fact that Mauricio's 10% inflation hasn't happened yet, and his crash.
All right. If you set it up, Jay, I will show up prepared.
I will do the spreadsheet. I will listen back through the last episode and I will document it all, and we will be ready for.
You're going to make us do scorecards too?
No, but you'll know we'll get to see what we said last time. So
everything was wrong. Let's just
it's
say,
all
let's
wrong.
just say
Absolutely.
that everything was wrong.
How's gold doing?
Actually, yeah, gold. We might have hit gold.
What episode was that?
It was the first one in January.
All right, plugs. Go leave a review on conferenceconnect.com. One of these guys, Jay, AJ, Mauricio, they're all speakers. They all speak at events. Limitless coming up. I think there are 2 of you guys at least are speaking at that. Go. I'm sure everyone, if you're listening to this podcast, you've heard one of these guys speak. Go leave a review for one of them on conferenceconnect.com. Go help them out, boost their reviews. That's all I got.
we still figured out a way to do an hour and 15.
You ruined the end here because I usually end off feeling good about coming back next week. I'm like, oh, let's everybody see this. And I'm not even looking forward to it. So thank you for robbing that from me. But if you're into the whole predictions thing, like Jay thinks you are, I guess I will see you next Thursday.
Tell us in the comments. See you guys.
Later.